Bismillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excuse me. Alhamdulillahi wahdahu. والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue the explanation of Hamawiyyah by the great Imam Shaykh al-Islam Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi rahimahullah, who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The time now 6:05 p.m. Wednesday, March the 16th, 2022. We're on the Islamic calendar. We're still in the month of Sha'ban, but the day is Wednesday, the 13th of Sha'ban. Did I say Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday, the 13th of Sha'ban, the year 1443, after the migration of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As we continue this tremendous treatise, brothers and sisters, we stop at the point where the great Imam says, as we talk about, just to get everyone acclimated or everyone caught up a little bit, we were discussing the affairs pertaining to the people. You'll find that Shaykh al-Islam gives some tremendous details about the previous books, such as the Torah and the Injil, the books that was revealed to the Jews and the Christians, and the difference between those books and certain affairs, not in the affairs of Aqidah where it was different, but a slight difference in regards to details, as we mentioned. For example, the Torah and the Injil and the Quran all agree, of course, with the names and attributes of Allah Ta'ala. Also, the Torah, the Injil, and the Quran also agree with the affairs concerning the hereafter. All of that is from the usul of the religion. All of them mention affairs about the hereafter, about paradise, about the hellfire, about the day of resurrection, and anything connected with that. However, the Quran stood out with something extra. That extra thing, or that extra maziyah, that extra distinguishing factor, that Allah Ta'ala made the Quran in a manner where it gave the most details in regards to the hereafter. It gave more details. So everything, of course, all the books, all agree, except you'll find, like we said, the Quran gave the most clarity and went in depth in regards to the details concerning the hereafter. As we'll find, just for example, we talked about some of the details. Some of those details, such as Surah Al-A'raf, the Surah of the plains. What's the plains? Surah Al-A'raf is talking about the plains on the day of resurrection. There will be people whose deeds will be equal. They will either, they didn't do enough to enter paradise, but they didn't do, of course, of evil, which would send them directly to hell. So they will be like in the middle. And they'll be in the middle or the plains or the A'raf where they will stand. Those type of in-depth details comes in the Quran only, in contrast to the books that were revealed before. This is what we discussed last class. But hold on to that point, because there's something else we're going to mention in this regard. So keep in mind, generally, the Torah, the Injil, and the Quran agree in all of these affairs. The affairs concerning the day of resurrection, and the names and attributes of Allah. Now, this is what Shaykh al-Islam says. فَإِذَا جَازَ تَأَوْلَ الصِّفَاتِ He says, if it's permissible for us to falsely distort the names and attributes of Allah. He says, in which the two books agree. He said, then distorting the affairs concerning the hereafter, in which one of those books stand out with more details. He said that affair is even more befitting. He said, وَالثَّانِي مِمَّا يُعْلَمُ بِالْقِرَارِ مِنْ دِينِ الرَّسُولِ أَنَّهُ بَاطِلٌ. Now listen, I'll say it one more time. The affairs of the sifat of Allah Ta'ala, that affair agreed with the Torah and the Injil and the Quran. Now, those who distort the ma'ad, as we talked about last class, we was talking about the two groups that Shaykh al-Islam used to show contradictions. If you look back in the book of the details, you'll find there's a group that distorted the meaning of the affairs of the ma'ad, of the hereafter. You'll find there are deviant sects out there that say a lot of things concerning the hereafter. They say that the day of resurrection is not real. Some of them say it's metaphoric. It's a state of mind. Some of them say that paradise and hell is not created yet. People would say a whole lot of satanic statements concerning the affairs of the hereafter, and they still exist to this day. Some of them say that hell doesn't exist, rather hell is here on earth. Some of them say, no, there is no paradise, rather paradise is here on earth. Some of them say that there isn't anything until the day of resurrection. That's when the law will create it. All these are deviant affairs, or rather you're going to say, satanic calls that will lead one astray. Some of them say on the day of resurrection, it's not a physical resurrection, it's an affair connected with the soul only. You'll find there's so many different types of deviant, corrupt ideologies of what people say out here. Some of them say there will be no eating and drinking in paradise because the intellect rejects it. Anyway, these are just examples that we gave. These are the people that distorted the affairs concerning the hereafter. Shaykh al-Islam brought in proof with those people. The people who distort the affairs concerning the hereafter, we said this last class, the people who distort the affairs of the hereafter, they argue with the people who distort the names and attributes. They argue amongst each other. Even though both of them use the same rhetoric and the same fundamentals, which is the intellect. So, you'll find that they basically mentioned and said, if you distort the names and attributes of Allah, then it's binding upon you to also follow our way, which is to distort the affairs concerning the hereafter. Hence, if you don't, then you contradict yourself. Because both of them are using what? Their intellect to justify these corrupt beliefs. So if you're using the same fundamentals or the same foundation that I'm using to fall into these distortions, then it's incumbent upon you to follow me. Because, Shaykh al-Islam, let's go back to it again. He says, if it's permissible to distort the names and attributes of Allah, if it's permissible to distort the names and attributes of Allah, in which you'll find that the two books agree, from the Torah and the Injil and the Quran. For verily distorting the ma'ad, distorting the affairs concerning the hereafter, in which you'll find that the details of the affair concerning the hereafter is more in the Quran, and it's in more depth, as we said. He says, just as we said, it's more befitting that you fall into what? Distorting that matter. Because the Quran will what? It's more detailed in regards to the affairs of the hereafter, as we said last class. We said that Allah Ta'ala made the Quran in a manner where the details of the affairs of the hereafter is clear, rather it's the most clear, more depth and more detail. Why? As we said last class, the reason for that is because there's no prophet that will come after the Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In contrast to the other affairs with the books from the previous nations, one prophet came after another. And any distortions or any newly invented beliefs or corrupt ideologies, that prophet came and clarified to what was correct, and the affair was what? Became clear. However, Allah Ta'ala, out of His infinite wisdom and perfect knowledge, knew that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, rather he had perfect knowledge, that he would be the last prophet and messenger to humanity. Being that the case, the affairs concerning the hereafter is in the most clearest way, and it's in the more depth, rather it's in the most depth in contrast to the previous books. What Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning here, he said the affair of what is more in depth, in the most clearest way, which goes, it preceded, it went to an extent that it went to the highest form or degree more than the Torah and Injil in regards to the affairs and the clarification of the affairs of the hereafter. If that was the case, where it was permissible now to distort the meanings and the attributes of Allah Ta'ala, where those affairs are not in detail in regards to the affairs concerning the hereafter, they're not. A person would say, how is that? Because Allah Ta'ala revealed the names and the attributes, but Allah did not inform us of the kayfiyah, or the true reality of how it is. In contrast to the affairs concerning the hereafter, those affairs, we know how it will be. We know what will end up, or affairs where certain things will take place. We have in depth, speaking about, matter of fact, I don't want to go down that road. So, Shaykh al-Islam is saying here, if you're saying it's now permissible for you to distort the names and attributes of Allah, in which all the books agree on, but the affair concerning the affairs of the hereafter, in which the Quran gave the most details, it would now necessitate that you have to distort the affairs of the hereafter, because they gave way more details than the Torah and Injil. Due to the fact, as we said, that Allah Ta'ala gave the last prophet and messenger, which as a result of it, then the affairs concerning the hereafter will be clarified in a way and in a manner that none of the previous nations from before had. If you say now, O people, from the Muslims, he's talking to, the Shaykh al-Islam is addressing the Muslims. He's saying here, the Jews, as we talked about this in the class last week, for the past 2 weeks we've been talking about this. We said that the Jews and the Christians, rather the Jews, he started with the Jews here, in this context. The Jews didn't fall into distorting the names and attributes of Allah. They didn't. They only ascribed certain affairs to the names and attributes of Allah having a deficiency. But they never distorted the meanings and the attributes. They never distorted the sifat of Allah Ta'ala as far as the meanings where they changed it. They never did that. What they did do, as far as the Jews, the Yahud, what they did do is ascribe to Allah's names and attributes a deficiency. For example, as we said last class, that the hand of Allah is tied up. Notice in the context in the ayah, the Jews affirmed the hand of Allah. But they ascribed to it a deficiency. But at the same time, they did affirm it. They believed in it. They believed in the name and the attribute. It says in the ayah, يَدُ اللَّهِ مَغْلُولَةً غُلَّتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَلُعِنُوا بِمَا قَالُوا بَلْ يَدَاهُ مَبْسُوطَتَانِ يُنْفِقُ كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. Allah Ta'ala says in the book, the Jews say that the hand of Allah is tied up. That's in Surah Al-Ma'idah. You'll find in the authentic Sunnah, the Jewish scholar came to the Messenger of Allah and affirmed the fingers of Allah, which necessitate that at the same time he also affirmed the hand of Allah. Where he said to the Messenger of Allah, as we said last class, he said, "Oh Muhammad," he said in the hadith, which is the Bukhari, he said, "Inna la najidu anna Allah yaj'al as-samawat 'ala al-isba' wal-ardin 'ala al-isba' wal-jibal 'ala al-isba' والماء الثرى على الإصبع والسائر الخلائق على الإصبع فيقول أنا الملك." فضحك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم تعجبا وتصديقا لقول الحبر اليهودي ثم تلا الآية وما قدر الله حق قدره والأرض جميعا قبضته يوم القيامة. تلا الآية. He said that the Jew came, said, "O Messenger of Allah, we find in our book, the Torah, that Allah will make the heavens upon a finger, and He will make the earths upon a finger, and He will make the mountains upon a finger, and He will make the water and the moist, or the moist dirt, the thara, upon a finger, and He will make the rest of the creation upon a finger." The Prophet ﷺ laughed. He laughed out of amazement and confirmation. The confirmation came in the last part of the hadith in the ayat that the Messenger of Allah recited, where he said, "They did not glorify Allah as He deserves to be glorified, and the earth will be folded up in His grip." grip. When you hear the word grip, so the Jews said fingers. Then in the ayah that the Messenger of Allah recited, it said grip. Then it says in the same ayah, it will be folded up, and أَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَضَتُهُ يَوْمًا وَالسَّمَاوَاتُ مَطْوِيَّاتْ بِيَمِينِهِ. He said that the heavens will be folded up in his right. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was firming the hand of Allah because the Jew also believed in that. Believed in the name and attribute. So the Jews did not distort the names and attributes of Allah. So the names, the attributes, all of those affairs were agreed in their book, along with came with the Quran. Shaykh al-Islam here, look to the depth that he had. The depth that he had as far as in reading. He's saying, those affairs all agree. The Jews, they came to the Message of Allah, with the Message of Allah confirming the names and attributes. However, if you look in the affairs concerning the hereafter, they all agree generally. However, the Quran came with more details, which was more than the names and the attributes of Allah as far as the details that was given. Because we didn't give a lot, Allah Ta'ala did not go into depth in regards to the names and attributes of Allah, in regards to how they are. In regards to the kayfiyah and the haqiqah. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Allah didn't inform us. He informed us about His names and attributes. He didn't inform us about what? How. So what Shaykh al-Islam is using as an argument here is saying, if you distort this, the names and attributes, what's more befitting is that you distort the affairs that has more details in it. That's from the usul of the religion. That's from the foundations of the religion. If you had the nerve and the audacity to distort the names and attributes of Allah, then it's more befitting that you what? Distort the affairs concerning the hereafter also. So that's basically what he's trying to say. And he said, if that's the case, and all of those in actuality is all what? Batil. It's all false. But he's trying to say, how do you not distort these matters, but you distort those matters? So he's basically saying, once you open up the circle, then it's incumbent upon you to include other matters of the religion, or the fundamentals of the religion, or the foundations of the religion. Hence, you will what? Contradict yourself. That's what he's trying to say here. And you'll find that they did not do that. Even though from the Muslims of today, they do that. You'll find, like we said, you'll find some very strange beliefs of the affairs concerning the hereafter. As I gave some examples, right, everyone? You'll find that there are people out there that say that they're Muslim, and they say there is no day of resurrection. For the nation of Islam, don't they say that they're Muslim? What do they believe as far as the affairs of the hereafter? What do they believe? They believe there is no day of resurrection. They said it's over, that's it. They say it's over. From them, as far as I know, they say that ignorance or the awakening is a state of mind, meaning attaining knowledge or what have you, something to that effect. Or some of them say that the second coming is the mothership, to the end of the nonsense. But some from amongst the people who say they're Muslim, they said there is no day of resurrection. There is no hellfire. Hell is here on earth, as we said some of the examples. Then you'll go to the other affairs of the Batiniyah. They say there is no day of resurrection, or there is no paradise in hell. Allah didn't create it yet. That's from the affairs of the Mu'tazila. From them they say that Allah on the day of resurrection will create paradise and hell, and it's not created yet. We know that's also false. Because the Prophet is informed right now the hellfire is created. May Allah give us refuge from it. And that paradise right now is created. Right now. The person will say how? Because we know the hadith about the Huri'i that scream out and curse the woman who harms her husband for those who will be married in paradise, to let you know that paradise exists right now. Paradise exists right now. And the hellfire exists right now. From the severe heat we find during the summer as the message of Allah is from what? From the affairs of what? The hellfire breeds. From the severe heat you find during the summer, as it comes in all the authentic narration. But anyway, those are just examples to let us know that there are satanic cults out there, and there are a variety. It's a melting pot of satanic cults out there. in which one Muslim needs to be on guard against and to learn his religion so he doesn't fall to one of these satanic calls, because it's extremely dangerous. And from amongst them who say that paradise, like we said, is not upon the physical, or the hellfire, or torture is not on the physical, it's on the soul. There's certain people that say that out there. Yes, it is. You'll find there are people out there that say there's no eating and drinking in paradise because the intellect doesn't accept that. It's unacceptable. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's in here. But anyway, that's the point that I wanted to mention to everyone. That Shaykh al-Islam said in that part. Does everyone understand that part that I just said? Or they need to repeat it in regards to distorting the affairs of the hereafter? It's more befitting that you do that if you had the nerve to distort the names and attributes of Allah. And that's basically saying, if you have now made a fundamental corrupt ideology and made that for you to follow, then it's incumbent upon you to distort other affairs of the religion. And this is what happened to other Muslims. And as a result of it, you find that they fell into these other satanic calls that you hear and you see today. Another affair of ta'weel, and he's talking about false distortions. How the names and attributes of Allah is distorted, what it leads to, which is distorting the affairs concerning the hereafter. He said also you'll find, as we'll get into it, that false interpretations and distortions in the book of Allah also led to another atrocity and another satanic call. What is that? That there's another prophet after the message of Allah. See, he's saying here, once you make this a fundamental, the circle grows and grows and grows and grows until other affairs of the religion are included, until what? You fall into a satanic call which will lead you to the hellfire. If you make these your fundamentals that you're working with. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Jayyid. So now Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, he says, وَأَمَّا الصِّنْفُ الثَّالِثِ. He said, as for the third people, because he's going to speak about the affair of ta'weel. Ta'weel has different meanings. Because there's a praiseworthy meaning for ta'weel, and there is a dispraiseworthy meaning for ta'weel. Because we'll talk about that. That's going to come. Fine. Now Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, وَأَمَّا الصِّنْفُ الثَّالِثِ وَهُمْ أَهْلُ التَّجْهِيرِ فَهُمْ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ الْمُنْتَسِبِينَ إِلَى السُّنَّةِ. Notice that Shaykh al-Islam is talking about the Muslims here. He's not talking about the kuffar. He's not talking about the non-Muslims. He's talking about the Muslims. So this is what he says. As for the third group, and they are the people of tajheer. Tajheer meaning those who claim that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ knowledge was deficient. The person will say that, how? We'll talk about that in a minute. He said, فَهُمْ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ الْمُنْتَسِبِينَ إِلَى السُّنَّةِ وَأَتْبَاعِ السَّلَفِ. And they are a lot of those who ascribe or attributed to the Sunnah. When they say ascribe or attributed to the Sunnah, who's he speaking about? The Muslims. And the followers of the Salaf. They say, indeed, the Messenger of Allah, now listen to this. This is the reason why he said they are called people tajheer. People who ascribe the Messenger of Allah's knowledge as being deficient. Meaning that the Messenger of Allah had jahl, had ignorance. Now listen, how? He said, those who say that the Messenger of Allah did not know the meanings in which Allah sent down of the names or the verses of the names and attributes of Allah. The Messenger of Allah didn't know its meanings, nor did Jibreel, did not know the meanings of the verses, nor the first and foremost from the first generation, did not know that. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayat that He's Azizun Hakeem, the Prophet didn't know its meaning. Or that Allah Ta'ala has a face that the Messenger of Allah didn't know its meaning. Or that Allah Ta'ala has two hands, the Messenger of Allah did not know its meaning. طيب, so let's go on. وَكَذَلِكَ قَوْلُهُمْ فِي أَحَدِيثِ الصِّفَاتِ. He said, also, their statement of the ahadith, of the authentic narrations concerning the attributes of Allah. Now listen to this. Indeed, its meaning, no one knows it except Allah. طيب. Everybody go open the Mus'haf to Surah Al Imran, the first page. Surah Al Imran, the first page of Surah Al Imran. Open the Quran to Surah Al Imran. طيب. So what's their proof? So the Messenger of Allah did not know the meanings of the verses or the verses that have in it the names and attributes of Allah.
So what's over?
Ali Imran.
13.
طيب. Ayah number 7, first page. We could go up a little bit. Let's go start from ayah number 5. طيب. So Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah now is bringing, what's the evidence for this? That indeed the meaning was not known except no one knew the meaning except Allah. Despite this, مع أن الرسول تكلم بهذا ابتداء فعلى قولهم تكلم بكلام لا يعرف معناه وهؤلاء يظنون أنهم اتبعوا قوله تعالى وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله فإنه وقف كثير من السلف على قوله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله وهو وقف صحيح ثم فرقوا بين معنى الكلام وتفسيره وبين التأويل الذي انفرد الله تعالى بعلمه وظنوا أن التأويل في كلام الله هو التأويل المذكور في كلام المتأخرين وغلطوا في ذلك. I'm going to read it in a minute. He said, this is the dalil they used. They said this, he said, despite the fact that the message of Allah, he's the one that conveyed these verses. It was revealed to him. And he's the one where it emanated from, or the verses started from the beginning. Of course, after Jibreel revealed, and the revelation had descended upon him, alayhi salatu wasalam, he's the one that conveyed it. It started with him. So based upon their statement, the message of Allah spoke speech, he didn't know what it meant. لا يعرف معناه. Doesn't know what it meant. When a person does not know what something means, it's as if they're what? Ignorant. They don't know. So I'm conveying to you affairs that I don't know what they mean, truly. So listen, he said these people, he's talked about the Muslims with these type of corrupt beliefs that pertain to the intellect of those who fell into distorting the names and attributes of Allah. He's speaking and addressing them. Starting from who, as we said, the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, even though the majority of who Shaykh al-Islam is focusing on is the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyah. But he said this is their evidence. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, no one knows its ta'wil. No one knows its meaning except Allah. He said, verily this stop, when one recites this ayah, which you'll find is a recitation of the lot of the Salaf. That no one knows its ta'wil except Allah. Right, everyone? He said this is a correct, authentic recitation. ثم فرقوا بين معنى الكلام وتفسيره وبين التأويل الذي فرض الله بعلمه. He said they did not. Now this is the issue right here. They did not separate or differentiate between the meaning of speech and its interpretation and the ta'wil, or the interpretation of which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does only have knowledge of, which we're going to clarify. He said they think that the word ta'wil in this particular verse, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is the ta'wil or the affair of what is the meaning in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let me go at the beginning. He said the ta'wil in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did say he only exclusively has knowledge of, they did not distinct between any of the meanings. So basically, Shaykh al-Islam is saying there's different meanings of the word ta'wil. There's different meanings of the word ta'wil. Ta'wil could be what? Praiseworthy, and it could be what? Dispraiseworthy, where ta'wil can mean distortions. Right? Ta'wil can also mean what? Commentary, explanation. Ta'wil can also mean that. For example, the verses or the tafsir which we know, which is tafsir whatever we want, tafsir al-Tabari, tafsir al-Tabari, and tafsir al-Qurtubi. You'll find that the name of his book, Tabari, he says, ta'wil Ta'wil al-Quran. Notice he called his tafsir, he called it ta'wil. So ta'wil in this context means what, everyone? Explanation, commentary. So notice the Imam al-Qurtubi also used the word ta'wil, but he used it to mean, in this context, what? What does it mean? Explanation, commentary, explaining it. That's all. So that's to let you know that ta'wil can come in the meaning of what? What is praiseworthy. And it can come in the meaning what it can mean what? Distortions. Is it clear, everyone? So Shaykh al-Islam is saying here, they did not distinguish between ma'na al-kalam, that this meaning of speech, meaning of those verses, and the tafsir, the commentary and the explanation of those verses, and the type of ta'wil, meaning those meanings that Allah does only know. What is he speaking about? We'll talk about that in a minute. He said they didn't distinguish between any of these meanings. And they thought that the meaning of ta'wil in the speech of Allah is the ta'wil of what is now mentioned in the affairs concerning what came in the affairs of the generations later on. Meaning that it means tafsir or commentary, or what the ulama truly mentioned concerning these verses, which is correct. What they mentioned in these ayat is correct. There is certain affairs that only Allah Ta'ala has knowledge of. So we'll mention this in a minute and clarify. What does it mean? It's easy. But what I wanted to say before we start this, the meaning of tajheel, the people of tajheel, the people who now ascribe to say that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ did not know the meaning of the verses. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed verses and said that Allah is Azizul Hakim, the Prophet ﷺ didn't know the meaning of that. It had no meaning. Or that the Messenger of Allah, when he heard the affair or heard the verses concerning the face of Allah, he didn't know the meaning. Or hands of Allah, he didn't know the meaning. They had no meaning. But what do we call this? This is called tafweed. I've actually heard people here in Philadelphia about 12 years ago say this. Exactly what he's mentioning here is exactly what I heard from some of the Muslims. They say, for example, do you believe Allah is above? They said, yeah. They said, that's kufr. He said it to me. You believe Allah is above the heavens? I said, yeah. So they said, do you believe Allah is in the place? It's a trick question. So basically you have to know how to stop them in their tracks. What do you mean by place? It's a trick question. So when they first came to me, they said this. They said, you believe Allah is above? I said, yes, absolutely. Without any hesitation, no doubt. He said, so you believe Allah is in the place. So the first thing you have to say when they say that, you have to say, what do you mean by place? Because place can break down to two categories. Place can mean something that confines. That something is in a certain distance and directions and is confining something, meaning it's around it. If you intend by that meaning, I don't believe that. Then you have the second meaning of place, where Allah is above, but at the same time, none of the directions contain Him. Rather, He's bigger than everything. If that's what you mean by the word place, that's the place, that is the meaning I affirm, and that is what I intend when you say the word place. But initially, the word place, we don't use it for the people of Sunnah, as it regards to Allah. It's a trick question. So, then he moved on to the next games that they said. So then he said to me, he said, these meanings, this is the point where Shaykh al-Islam is talking about here. He said, these meanings of ascend, or dissension, or ascension, or face, or hands, he said, we just make tafweed. He said, we just entrust the meanings to Allah. That's what he said. He said, we entrust all the meanings to Allah. He said, the word face, hands, ascension, dissension, all those matters we entrust to Allah. All of it. Based upon what they just said, when they say we entrust all the meanings to Allah, it's as if they're saying that that was the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. That when he recited all of these verses and even in his supplications, that the Messenger of Allah did not know the meanings of none of these affairs. To the point where even when he made dua and the Messenger of Allah used some of the names and attributes of Allah by saying certain affairs, even about his face, like I seek refuge in you to better ta'ala, I seek refuge by your face from your punishment. When the Messenger of Allah made those type of supplications, based upon what they're saying, there is no meaning to it. Meaning that they saying that the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, they're saying, we entrust everything to Allah, including the meanings. Was that really the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah or not? No, it wasn't. That's what you call tafweed. Tafweed al-mutlaq. Absolute entrustment, even the meanings. We said in the early part when we was talking about Hamawiyyah, that the affairs of tafweed, there's two types of tafweed. There's two types of entrustment, as we said. We said this about maybe 8 months ago. You have tafweed of the people of Sunnah, and you have the tafweed of the people of Bid'ah. The first category of the people of tafweed of the people of Bid'ah is that you entrust everything to Allah. The kayfiyah, the true reality of what it is, and its meanings. Everything. That's incorrect. The tafweed of the people of Sunnah, the people of the Salaf who truly follow correct belief, their type of tafweed is entrusting the kayfiyah of the names and attributes to Allah. But they affirm the meaning. Right now, any Muslim right now that just became Muslim, anybody who makes dua right now to Allah, oh Allah, I ask you by your mercy to forgive so-and-so. Oh, even when you make dua at the third part of the night, when you wake up in the third part of the night to pray and make dua because you believe that Allah descends at that third part, and then you wake up and make dua hoping that Allah will answer it because you believe the meaning of the hadith is that Allah descended in that part of the night. Simple. See how they make something simple difficult and confuse the Muslims and the masses by this nonsense and rhetoric? You say, oh Allah, I asked you by your izzah, but you're azizun, you're hakeem. So you make dua by these names and attributes that you believe that they have meanings to them. That's why you're asking Allah by those names. Based upon what they believe, the Mufawwidah, or the people of Tijhiyah, they're saying, oh, the Messenger of Allah, when he said this, he didn't know what it meant. Because the sunnah was to just entrust it to Allah. That's basically what it is. That's basically what they're saying. So, of the sunnah, what is the affair of tafweed? The affair of tafweed, everyone, is to entrust what? The kayfiyah. The kayfiyah. We entrust it to Allah, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing its knowledge of how it is. That's the kayfiyah in which, what it says in the ayah, the verse that you just opened the mushaf to. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was speaking about. That no one knows his ta'weel except Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about the affairs concerning what, everyone? His names and attributes of how they are. The kayfiyah. No one knows that except Him. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about. Not the affairs that there's no meaning to them. That when you hear the verses or the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, for example, the hadith, every Muslim, when they hear this, everyone becomes moved by it. Every person, a Muslim, when they hear this particular hadith, they're concerned about themselves. They're concerned about themselves, and they're concerned about their well-being in the hereafter. What hadith is that? Hadith when you hear, O Aisha, inna qulub al-ibad bayna usbu'ain min asabi' al-rahman yuqallibuha kayfa yasha. Simple. Verily, O Aisha, the heart is between the two fingers, between the fingers of the most merciful. he flips it how he wills. Based upon the people of Tajhir, or the people of Tafweed, that hadith has no meaning. It means something else. Rather, we are just entrusted to Allah. That is from the Taqweed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no one knows it except Him. Is that correct? We say no, not in regards to the meaning. The meaning is clear. The kayfiyah of how we know it, that's only with Allah ta'ala. That's what Shaykh al-Islam is speaking about here in regards to the people of Tajhir, who describe the message of Allah with ignorance in regards to the meanings of these verses that have in it the names and attributes of Allah. That's what Shaykh al-Islam is talking about in regards to that particular, that is the correct tafsir in regards to the verse in Surah Al-Imran, which we'll discuss right now. There is a dua. A person would say, everyone. There is a statement of Imam Ahmad that he said about the nusus al-sifat, that there is no how, it's not in any type of way, and there is no meaning. I will talk about that in a minute, because I don't want everyone to get confused yet, because I want to go back to it. I want to finish the tafsir of Surah Al-Imran, then I'll go back to that. So now, go back to the tafsir of Surah Al-Imran in ayat number 5. We can start from 5 before we get to 7. Fine, so let's go back to it. The Prophet ﷺ, when he said these verses in these narrations that you just heard, he was commanded to inform it. The people, what Shaykh al-Islam is talking about, is saying that these characteristics or these verses or these ahadith, he doesn't know any meaning. They had no meaning to him. He just entrusted to Allah, all of it. And like we said, their evidence was in ayat number 7, Surah Al-Imran, where it says, no one knows his ta'weel except Allah. Right, everyone? So, they misunderstood the meaning of ta'weel here. They say the meaning of ta'weel is that no one knows the nusus al-sifat. No one knows the interpretation of the character or the narrations or the verses that come in regards to Allah's attributes. The prophets didn't know. Not only did Muhammad ﷺ not know, but even the prophets from before were ignorant. They didn't even know the meanings. The angels don't know. The message of Allah ﷺ didn't even have knowledge of it. Nor did Jibreel. Now listen to this. If the angels of Allah Ta'ala, they even know the meaning of the names and attributes of Allah. They even make dua with certain names and characteristics of Allah that they fully understand the meanings of it. For example, Allah Ta'ala shows us that the belief of the angels is that they believe Allah is above. The belief in the angels, that they believe that Allah is a Rabb. You'll find there's ayat in verses that the angels also worship Allah Ta'ala. And that they also make dua by His names and attributes. What's the dalil? There's an ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this book, وَالَّذِينَ يَحْمِلُونَ الْعَرْشَ وَمَنْ حَوْلَهُ يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ وَيُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ وَيَسْتَغْفِرُونَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا رَبَّنَا وَسِعْتَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ رَحْمَةً وَعِلْمًا فَاغْفِرْ لِلَّذِينَ تَابُوا وَاتَّبَعُوا سَبِيلَكَ وَقِهِمْ عَذَابَ الجَّحِيمِ رَبَّنَا وَأَدْخِلْهُمْ جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ التي وعدتها ومن صلح من آبائهم وأزواجهم وذرياتهم إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم وقهم السيئات ومن تق السيئات يومئذ فقد رحمته وذلك هو الفوز العظيم. As Allah Ta'ala says, this is what the angels said to what they said to Allah Ta'ala. Those who carry the arsh of Allah, يحملون العرش, and those who are around it, They glorify His praise. يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ. Glorifying His praise is what, everyone? It's ibadah. Is it not saying Subhanallah, glorifying Allah? What's that, everyone? It's ibadah. So, they believe in the rububiyyah of Allah. A person would say, what's the dalil for that? Ibadah. Just the mere fact that they do that. But if you don't believe it, the ayah still says, they say, our Lord. Once you hear the word our Lord, that's rububiyyah, automatically. Anyway, the ayah says, يُسَبِّحُونَ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ. And they believe in Him, subhanAllah. They seek forgiveness for those who believe. What is seeking forgiveness? That's also worship. That's tawheed al-uluhiyyah. So the angels also perform the ibadah of Allah, which is the uluhiyyah of Allah, right? طيب, yeah. يسبحون بحمده ويستغفرون للذين آمنوا ربنا وسعت كل شيء رحمة وعلما. Oh our Lord, that's what everyone, rububiyyah. ربنا وسعت كل شيء رحمة وعلما. You encompass everything with your mercy and knowledge. What's mercy and knowledge, everyone? The names and attributes of Allah Ta'ala. وسعت كل شيء رحمة وعلما فاغفر للذين تابوا. They're making dua here. Oh Allah, forgive those who what? Make tawbah to you. That's dua. Dua is also what, everyone? Worship. طيب. So, then the angels now make another dua. So they make dua for the people of Sunnah. They also make dua for the people of Tawheed. They make dua for them. طيب. Notice it says in the last part of the ayah, it says, إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. So, the angels are making dua by names and attributes of Allah. Based upon what these people believe, from the Asha'ira and the people of Tafweed, the angels are ignorant of what they make dua for. They didn't know what the meanings meant. So why did they if you look in the ayahs, they use specific names and specific words and in specific context because they knew it and what it meant. So they asked Allah for forgiveness for the people who believe because they knew what the meaning meant. Based upon what this nonsense necessitates, it's just absolute idiot. It's just absolute nonsense to say that they don't know what it means. The angels, Jibreel, nor the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We just entrust all of it to Allah. So all those affairs is what? Absolute stupidity. To say that the angels didn't know the meaning, the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't know the meaning, and also Jibreel didn't know the meaning. None of them knew the meaning. Because those are from the affairs that no one knows the ta'wil except Allah. That's what they used as a verse. That's what they used as evidence in Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 7, if you look at your Mus'haf. Is that correct, everyone? Right, so what do we say in regards to the meaning of this verse? Or that part specifically? It says, لِأَنَّهُمْ أَسَاءُوا الْفَهْمَ فِي مَعْنَى التَّأْوِيلِ. They now misuse or came to the wrong conclusion in understanding this affair of ta'wil. They thought that the meaning of ta'wil in the Quran, as regards to the speech of Allah, is that terminology that they utilize. To say that particular recitation, when you stop at the verse, no one knows it's ta'wil except Allah. It is correct what the people of Sunnah do say. However, as we said, you have to know what is the meaning of ta'wil here. To sum it up, everyone, the meaning of ta'wil here, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only knows, and He singled out with having this knowledge of, what is it, everyone? The knowledge of the true reality of His attributes, the reality of His essence, the reality of His names, and the reality of His attributes and His actions. That is the haqa'iq, or the true reality of affairs of what only Allah Ta'ala has knowledge of. That's it. That's the meaning of the verse. Is it clear, everyone? As for the meaning of the word ta'wil in regards to the meaning of tafsir, that's if you was to recite the... Matter of fact, let me go back to the recitation. If you go back to Surah Al-Imran, you have two recitations. You can recite it like this. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله. You can stop right there. So you notice there's a stop if you look in the Mus'haf. That waqf, that stop that I made in the ayah is correct. Upon that, the meaning of ta'wil, if you stop, what does that mean? What was the answer that I just gave everyone? What is it? Ahsan. The names of Allah, the knowledge of the true reality of those attributes, the knowledge of the true reality of His essence, the names, and His actions. Those affairs no one knows except Allah. Fine. Now you have another recitation. Another recitation is recited like this. If you look in the Surah Al-Imran, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم. It's connected. يقولون آمنا به كل من عند ربنا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. طيب, if you connect it and you keep reciting without stopping, it says no one knows His ta'wil except Allah and those who are well grounded in knowledge. Based upon the tafsir of that ayat, if you connect it, it means the what? The commentary, the explanation of the verses. Because the only people that know the commentary of the verses in the book of Allah are who? The people of knowledge. The people of ignorance do not know the commentary. Upon that, we take another meaning of the word ta'wil, which is what? Tafsir. Tafsir. Which means what, everyone? Commentary, explanation. He said, those who now, وظنوا أن التأويل المذكور في كلام الله هو التأويل المذكور في كلام المتأخرين وغلطوا في ذلك. For those who from the past, the ta'wil that is mentioned with those who came from the first generation, which is ta'rif, with ta'wil الذي في كلام الله, which is now to bring knowledge of the affairs concerning what everyone, the true reality of Allah's names and attributes, and what the affairs will ultimately what? Be concluded as, which is another type of affair with the يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. We'll talk about that in a second. Anyway, the names and the kayfiyah of the high reality of the names and attributes of Allah Ta'ala, those are from the affairs that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala only has knowledge of. No one else has the knowledge of those affairs at all. But the other meaning of ta'wil, as we'll talk about inshallah, is tafsir, commentary. And we'll talk about in another minute, maybe next class, probably tomorrow, that another meaning of ta'wil is what would the final outcome be. That comes in your book if you read it. It's all in there. So you don't have to worry about finding the meanings of the word ta'wil because it's all in your books. I just didn't want to mention it all here so you get confused. That's why I didn't mention it. But it's going to come because it's in the next page. And it's in the pages to follow. The other meanings of the word ta'wil. So you have ta'wil that means tafsir. So you have ta'wil that also means what? Tahrif, distortions. And you have ta'wil, as we'll talk about inshallah, that means the final outcome of affairs. Or that what the affair will lead to or end up being. That's another meaning of the word ta'wil. All that's going to come. However, what we're speaking about here is just those two meanings. He said, Shaykh al-Islam said, they thought ta'wil just means what? Just to change the meaning. Not realizing that ta'wil means another what? Affair. It can mean other affairs. So they just thought when they read that verse in the book of Allah, that's what the word ta'wil means, meaning we have to change or distort the meanings and the names and the attributes of Allah. Not realizing that it could mean something else. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? It could mean something else. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now let's go back to the book and read. He even starts to mention the meaning of the word ta'wil. فَإِنَّ التَّأْوِيلِ يراد به ثلاث معاني. What's intended by is three meanings. Ta'wil, in the terminology of a lot of those who came later on, the muta'akhirin, who came later on, is to take the wording out of its original meaning of what a person hears from the context and take it and move it to another what? Meaning that is weak, with a so-called evidence that is connected with. Meaning if it's not acceptable intellectually or rational in one's rationality, where they can't rationalize it, then take it out of its meaning, which you hear linguistically, and put it to another one. And that was from the meaning of the word ta'wil in the later generation. He said, فَلَا يَكُنْ مَعْنَى اللَّفْظ الْمُوَافِقِ لِدَلَالَةِ ظَاهِرِهِ تَأْوِيلًا عَلَى اصْطِلَاحِ هَؤُلَاءِ. He said, for verily the meaning of the word, when a person says it, he said, it does not agree with the indication of what it apparently what means or intends. So that is the meaning of ta'wil upon the terminology of these people here. And they think that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended by the word ta'wil in that verse, which is in Surah Al-Imran. وَأَنَّ لِلنُّصُوص تَأْوِيلًا مُخَالِفْ لِمَدْلُولِهَا لَا يَعْلَمُهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ أَوْ يَعْلَمُهُ الْمُتَأَوِّلُونَ. He said, or they say that the text, it does have a ta'wil. He says this in contrast or goes against what the meanings indicate, apparently. And that those are the meanings that no one knows except Allah, or the people who came first know what it means. He said, then these people, they say, تُجْرَى عَلَى ظَاهِرِهَا فَظَاهِرُهَا مُرَادٌ مَعَ قَوْلِهِمْ إِنَّ لَهَا تَأْوِيلًا بِهَذَا الْمَعْنَى لَا يَعْلَمُهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. He said, what's strange is that during the history, he said, you'll find that these people, some of them will say, for example, that it's applicable to what is the apparent meaning. For the apparent meaning is what's intended. He said, despite of their statement that's saying, verily at the same time, it does possess a distorted meaning based upon what we just said, that no one knows except Allah. What does Shaykh al-Islam say here clearly? This is contradictory. How can you say it's intended, apparently, from the apparent text, and then at the same time it said it still has a what? Another intention or intended meaning behind it. He says, in which a lot of these people fell into, of those who ascribe to the Sunnah. So he's still talking about the Muslims here. He said, from those أصحاب الأئمة الأربعة وغيرهم, of those who ascribe to the Sunnah, from the so-called people that now ascribe themselves with the four great Imams and other than that. Exactly what Shaykh al-Islam is said here is exactly what's taking place to this very day. What he said is exactly what he's saying. It is. When these people come and they talk, they don't believe Allah is above. They said that we have to trust all the meanings to Allah, and they'll even use the A'immat al-Arba'a as a dalil right in front of your face. Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi'i, such. What he's saying exactly is exactly what's the reality of people. He knew exactly what he's saying back then, and it's still applicable to this very day. And when they came to me and said all these things, all of these type of matters that were mentioned in this book came to my mind. I was like, wow, Shaykh al-Islam mentioned it. Verbatim what they say is exactly what they do. We don't believe Allah is above. The word ascension means domination. That the word istawla does not mean, istawla doesn't mean istawla, it means istawla. Some of them say that. It doesn't mean ascension, it means domination. Allah dominated the throne. That means that Allah lost his possession of it. Then he had to get it back. And he had to fight someone to get it. And then he had to conquer it and dominate it, which is all nonsense. How is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something he created, and then he loses his possession of it, of something he created, to another individual he created? Does it make any sense? It doesn't make absolutely any sense. Then they say, oh, no. See, what we have to do is, we have to trust all the meanings to Allah. Then that's another thing they said. I said, wow, this is exactly what he said in the book. We didn't trust all the meanings. We didn't trust all of it, everything. Names, attributes, meanings. So when I make dua, when I raise my hands, and I say, "Oh Ghafoor, ighfirli." Oh my Lord, who's all forgiving, forgive me. I don't know what that meant. So if I'm asking Allah for sins, why do I specifically choose the word Ghafoor? Because I know what it means. If I'm asking, the one who's Ar-Razzaq, Urzuqli, the all one who possessor of provisions, provide for me. Why did I say that specifically in my dua if I don't know what it means? Absolute nonsense. That's the reason why the majority of teachers, even when I was overseas and they was teaching this, he said this is all not every time they was writing a rebuttal, said, you see the nonsense these people believe, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just absolute confusion. Confuse anybody. And as a result of it, a lot of the people who believe this, they all go astray. Because it puts doubt in them. I'm going to raise my hands and pray to my Lord, say Allahu Akbar. And I'm going to say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I don't know what the meaning that means. All praise is due to the one Lord of the heavens and the earth. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So when I say Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, based upon that, I don't know what that means. I'm just entrust that meaning to Allah. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Absolute nonsense. So that's what Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning here. So he said that you'll find that's from one of the meanings of the word Tadwir, and that's the first meaning that he mentioned and said. Just to sum it up, he said that basically he's saying that the word Tadwir means tahrif, distortions. Then we're going to go to the other one, we'll continue that tomorrow, inshallah. Did we say we was going to go over that other one, Ahmed? Probably go over that probably tomorrow, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson? Tafadhal.
I had missed the second. You said placement two things. I had missed the second one.
If a person comes to you, I know what you're talking about. If a person comes to you right now, they say, "We believe in." This is to teach everyone. Oh, please don't tell me it went off. Oh, there you go. Right now, someone comes to you and says, "Do you believe Allah is above?" Yes. You believe Allah descends? Yes. You believe Allah ascend after He created the heavens and the earth and everything between it in 6 days, and then He ascended above the throne? Yes. So you believe Allah is in a place. That's what they'll say to you. Right? You believe Allah is in a place. What's your answer? The first thing you have to say is, what do you intend by place? Whatever they try to trick you and say, no, I want to know what you mean. No. I didn't say place. You said it. That's what you have to say, because they play a lot of word games. So you have to say, first of all, we don't believe Allah. You have to be very, very accurate in your words you choose. First, we don't use the word place in regards to Allah, because the word place initially wasn't used by none of the companions. Was it used by the Messenger of Allah? Nor was it used by the companions, nor was it used by the Tabi'een who came from after the companions. They never used the word place. That was a newly invented matter word that came later on when people like you came and tried to cause confusion amongst the Muslims by instilling doubt and their concern about their Lord as far as Allah being above the creation. Oh, he's coming. Allah. So, number one is when a person says to you, they come to you from those Muslims that have been affected by Greek philosophy. Because a Muslim, when they come and make these statements, when they say, do you believe Allah is in a place? They've been affected by the ideologies of Greek philosophy. Just they don't realize it. But they've been affected by Greek philosophy. So what they did was they adopted it and they used the intellect as the foundation of what they accept or reject based upon what's been conveyed through the revelation. So if my mind doesn't accept it, then I reject it. Or I have to twist its meaning because the apparent meaning is not what's intended. Right? Fine. So then they came with words to try to confuse the Muslims in the street and instill doubt concerning Allah's names and attributes. So they came with this word place, where it's from those alfaz that they call them. They call them al-alfaz, al-mubhama, al-muhtamil, al-haq, al-batil. So they came with words that it can carry truth and falsehood at the same time. So it's like a word that is mubhama, or they call it ibarat, muhima. Muhima, mubhama, muhtamil, al-haq, al-batil. So what they did, they came with words or statements, or rather here in this context you say words. Words that can necessitate truth and falsehood at the same time. It can carry both. And it's muhima, and it can give an insinuation of truth, and it can give you an insinuation of what? Falsehood. That's the reason why Shaykh al-Islam said that the origin of these words should never be used in regards to Allah due to the fact that they can necessitate truth and falsehood at the same time, and a person can utilize it if he was evil and he wanted to now, so-called, play both sides of the fence. I could say, I say makan, and what I intend by is what? A false meaning, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is confined in a place, and so I'm with you, O Shaykh. Or I could say that the people of the Sunnah, I mean the word place. So when I mean the word place, what I'm intended by is that Allah is bigger than everything and nothing contains Him. So Shaykh al-Islam basically said this origin, just to sum it up, so we can not make it elongated. He's saying in its essence, these words should be used at all. So when this individual came to you, he's using the words to try to force as if you used it, but you didn't. He said it, not you. So he said, do you believe Allah's in a place? So that's how you have to say, ho, 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 ho. First, I don't use the word place. Second, what do you mean by it? Yes, you do. You use the word place. No, I don't. I never said Allah's in the place. You said it. So now you got to hold them in the tracks. Like saying, what do you intend by the word makan? I never used the word makan, place. I would stick to the words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. For example, He's above the throne. That's the origin of what we stick to. The word place came later to cause confusion amongst the Muslims, to instill doubt concerning Allah's names and attributes, and from them is Allah being above. So, due to the fact you've been affected by Greek philosophy, because that's what you've been affected by, let's now break it down. Let's dissect it. What do you mean by the word place? Because place is from those words that it can insinuate falsehood and truth at the same time. And they'll say, what do you mean? So let's dissect it. The word place what you intend by it, what you're trying to make applicable to me, which I don't believe, is that if you say something is in a place, it means that it's confined with all directions around it. Because that's in their minds, in their so-called intellects, that's their only way of believing that something could be above. Where if it's above, it's confined to a certain place where something is surrounding it. That is a belief that I don't believe. That is a false belief, and we reject it. But what we do say is, if you say that Allah being above in the place, but what you intend by it is that Allah is above and He's bigger than everything, including directions. He's bigger than everything, and that He is bigger than everything, and nothing confines Him, or nothing surrounds Him, or nothing constricts or confines Him. That is a belief that we believe, and we affirm that. But at the same time, leave off the word place because we don't use that. You see clear what I'm saying? It's a trick question. Also, from the affairs of Ahlul Sunnah, in regards to methodology, they don't use words that can carry false and to get clarity, falsehood and truth at the same time. That's the first thing. From our religion, we never use words nor statements or general statements that can carry truth and falsehood at the same time. We always bring statements and words that all aid the truth only. That's it. There is no such thing as I'm playing the neutral role in our religion. That does not exist. There's only falsehood, there's only truth. That's it. There's no in between, so I'm going to play games and say I'm going to play the neutral role. I'm just going to be in the middle, I'm just going to be in the neutral role. That doesn't exist in our religion. There's only haqq and batil. There's only truth and falsehood. And the only thing you do is, you're supposed to use words and statements that aids the truth. And if you use a so-called general statement, you have to what? Clarify what you mean by the general statement in regards to what? Aiding Allah's religion and His haqq. Is it clear?
That was a principle.
It is a principle.
You gotta write it back.
We'll talk about that. Talk about it later tomorrow. That's when you, for example, another general statement that the people falsely use these days and times. They say, for example, we don't blind follow anyone. That's another general statement. That's a general statement. When the common folk hear it, they be like, yeah, we don't blind follow anyone. Yeah, we don't blind follow anyone. No, there's different types of taqleed. Taqleed breaks down into different categories. Some taqleed you do need. For example, when a person takes shahada and you just enter the fold of Islam, you have to do some type of taqleed. There's no getting around it. You get it? You have to. Somebody has to teach you. You got to be taken by the hand. Somebody has to teach you. They got to show you how to do certain things. So you'll find that Ibn Qayyim said that to say we don't blind follow anyone is a general statement. That because it carries falsehood and it carries what? Haqq at the same time. You have to break down what you intend by it. Because taqleed is of different types. You got the taqleed that is haram. Taqleed of following something without any evidence and proofs from Kitab and Sunnah. That's haram. Then you have the taqleed that's hated, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Then you got the taqleed that is highly recommended. For example, some of us, when we say in our ahadith, the great Imam Hafiz ibn Hajar said it's sahih. Or if you say the great Imam al-Albani said it's hasan or sahih. That's a type of taqleed. It is. Because you're relying on someone of a scholar that you know is reliable. He's reliable. And his sources of what he gathers is complete because he has some knowledge of certain affairs that you don't know. Then you have the type of taqleed that is wajib. Type of taqleed is wajib. The taqleed of what in actuality is called ittiba'. It's called what? Following the Kitab and Sunnah. That in its origin is a form of taqleed, but we don't call it taqleed, we call it ittiba', following. That type of taqleed is obligatory. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, Alif Lam Mim, Sad. He said, Kitabun unzila ilayka falat yakun fi sadrika harajun min litunzira bihi wa dhikra lil mu'minin. Ittabi'u ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. Wa la tattabi'u min dunihi awliya qalila ma tadhakkarun. Second ayah, Surah Al-A'raf. Follow what has been revealed and from your Lord. Do not follow anything besides as an awliya. Meaning awliya, meaning from the satanic cause of disbelief, or innovations, innovative practices, innovative concepts, and all those false notions. It's meaning stick to the sunnah and stick to what was revealed from your Lord. That is called ittiba'. That's obligatory. And generally, it's a type of taqleed. It is. Ibn Qayyim says, yes, it is a type of taqleed, but in actuality, we call it ittiba'. That is obligatory. He says, so this individual comes now and says, we don't blind follow anyone. You have to ask him, what do you mean by it? Because there's different types. But you'll notice that when a person utilizes that general statement, it can get the common folk all riled up. So it can all get them what? To believe what you're saying. But if you realize these type of statements and dissect them, you will know that it's falsehood. It's a word of truth, but it's intended by what? Falsehood. What happened with Ali ibn Abi Talib? What did they say? The Khawarij, when they tried to get Ali killed, they said, La hukma illa lillah. They was using the statement of truth. There's no ruling except for Allah. What they were using the statement of the verse was against Ali, but the people didn't know what was what was utilized as far as the hukum. The hukum, we'll stop here, inshallah. The hukum that was utilized to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib, when they investigated it, they was using a verse in order to get the people rallied against whom? Ali. But when they investigated the whole affair, they found out that all of those matters in certain instances where men could be in charge of certain affairs, especially in arbitration, and certain matters pertaining to wives and spouses and different type of marital discord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands certain people to take on the handle of those affairs from the human beings. See how people of ignorance take advantage of people who's ignorant? People of desires take advantage of the ignorance of the people, not realizing that they don't know these details. So they'll use it to rally people against, or rally to a certain cause that's satanic, not realizing that there's other affairs that's being intended behind these statements. Is it clear what I'm saying? Let me stop here, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.